Uh, the session of today is strengthening Africa's pharmaceutical sector, challenges and opportunities. Before us here, we have a panelists. We have Ms. Sophie Molly. We have Ms. Nuran Idris, who are working with the GS1. And we have Mr. Jolly Abu, working with the UN. Then we have Dr. Liane Marie, who will be joining us shortly on call. My name is Joseph Mutasaga. I'm the Manager, Business Planning and Development. I work with the National Drug Authority. National Drug Authority is a drug regulatory agency that started in 1993 by Act of Parliament. And it is an ISO certified, ISO 9001-2015. We have undergone World Health Organization full regulatory system strengthening, and the laboratory was rated at level 4. The other regulatory agency, the regulatory functions are still on track, some in maturity level 2. We're a center of excellence for good manufacturing practice in East Africa. I am currently also on the board of Kosu Rehabilitation Hospital. I'm a former member of Uganda Heart Institute. I've been the manager business development for over 3 years, and I've been I've worked as a lecturer. I'm the coordinator of pharmaceutical investments in Uganda with the Uganda Investment Authority. I'm the member of the National Task Force for National Immunization Program. I am also a member of the Task Force for co-payment, malaria co-payment system for Global Fund. Leading on the contract on one of regulatory system strengthening infrastructure is a 23-floor laboratory, which will be the largest in the Southern Hemisphere in Africa. I have a wide variety of experience in lecturing, in risk management, in resource mobilization, and in monitoring the WHO regulatory systems using the GBT, the Global Benchmarking Tool. I lead a team of resource mobilization, monitoring and evaluation, planning, investment, and institutional development within National Drug Authority. In terms of my experience, I have more than 13 years of working experience. I have a master's of business administration from Heriot-Watt University, Edinburgh. I'm a fellow of Association of Chartered Certified Accountants. I'm a member of Certified Public Accountants of Uganda also. I hold a bachelor's degree from Oxford Brookes University in the UK, and I'm a member of the project management professionals, among other professions. With that brief introduction of myself, as a session chair, I would want to now call upon my panel that I will be chairing today, starting with Ms. Sophie Molly, the Senior Healthcare Manager of GS1 Global Office, to introduce yourself in 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Joseph, and my introduction will be short. As you mentioned, I'm a Senior Manager at GS1 Healthcare in GS1 Global Office in Brussels, Belgium. And before that, I was working at the World Customs Organization in terms and in charge of the project IPM, which was a tool in the fight against counterfeiting. So in terms of expertise, I have a 7 years expertise on fight against counterfeiting in various sectors, not only healthcare. And my position at GS1 Healthcare is, for the moment, it's been 4 years now that I'm working with the team. And my heart has been always very close to Africa because I've organized a lot of RED operation over there. At that time, I'm in charge of the business development and the strategic partnership. That's why I think we're here today. I'm in charge of the solution partners community, meaning all the possible solution providers who can implement traceability within companies or within countries. In a nutshell. Thank you, Joseph.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Sophie. Next is Ms. Nuran Idris, also working with the GS1 as the Healthcare Manager, Africa, or GS1 Global Office.
Super. Thank you, Joseph, and hello, everyone. My name is Nuran Idris, and I work as Healthcare Manager for Africa at GS1 Global Office, as Joseph kindly introduced me. So what I do at GS1, where I've been now for 2 years, is supporting countries in Africa in setting up pharmaceutical traceability. It's a very humongous effort. Definitely not doing this by myself. Seriously, definitely not within GS1 and even beyond. There's many stakeholders in this place, and I'm just one of the many stakeholders that are working in this space to raise awareness, to support countries as they move towards pharmaceutical traceability. Before joining GS1, I worked with multiple USAID projects in multiple countries in Africa and beyond. And through that, I believe I know supply chain pretty well, this healthcare supply chain pretty well, the various components, the various complexities, the various requirements and whatnot, and being able to see how GS1 standards can leverage that, the supply chain, which many organizations are passionate about, are working in this region, is something that I'm really looking forward to see, looking forward to sharing with you a little bit of what I do and what I know of the region and of this space over the next few minutes. Definitely not few hours. Back to you, Joseph.
Okay, thank you, Nuran Idris. Mr. Jolly Abu, you can introduce yourself.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, fellow panelists. My name is Jolly Abu. I am the Executive Pharmaceutical Officer for the Medical Support Section in the Office of Supply Chain Management at the United Nations Secretariat in New York. I joined the UN in 2005 as a seconded officer from the Nigerian Army in the rank of Colonel. I graduated from the Ahmadu Bello University with my first degree in pharmacy, Bachelor of Pharmacy in 1984, and got my master's later on from the Bayero University, Kano in 1990. I started my career, my internship and pharmacy practice, principally a few years in the hospital, and then more into broad chain supply chain management for the entire Nigerian Army, both at the divisional level and at the Army headquarters. I held some strategic posts at the Medical Corps headquarters as the Deputy Staff Officer 1 of Pharmacy Directorate. From there, I commanded the divisional medical stores and then also was Deputy Commander of the Nigerian Army Medical Stores. I proceeded to Nigerian Army College of Logistics as a directing staff, what we call lecturer, and chief instructor in the Department of Management. And it was from there that I got seconded to the United Nations as the Medical Support Services Officer. And I've been in the same section for the whole of the period until now that I'm talking to you. My section is actually responsible for the supply chain for medical, for pharmaceuticals, medical equipment, consumables, ancillary services, etc. For peacekeeping operations and peace building missions across the globe, not only in Africa. However, because we have more of them in Africa, we have a lot of focus on the supply chain for pharmaceuticals as far as the United Nations is concerned. My section now is driven by the category management policy, where I am solely, before I used to be responsible for medical equipment, consumables, pharmaceuticals, but now I am the sole manager of the pharmaceutical category, including all medicines, vaccines, blood and blood products supplied to the field. Yeah, so I am very, very keen in participating in this panel, and hopefully, as we speak on, I'll be able to know how best the UN can benefit from the pharmaceutical industry in Africa. What are its challenges, and how can we maximize the potentials in the African continent? Thank you very much.
I'll quickly take you through the topic of today. We're talking about strengthening Africa's pharmaceutical sector, challenges and opportunities. COVID-19 presented a number of challenges to the African continent, ranging from the vaccine, unavailability, and it was a scramble because the Western and developed countries were a little bit holding some of these vaccines. They could not be accessed by the African continent. Some of the consumables that were urgently needed in the African continent to address the needs of the population were not available. If they were there, they were limited, and reaching them was a little bit of a challenge. And so many of the African countries became a little bit creative in coming up with different remedies for addressing from the local plans to address the challenges. And this topic could not come at a better time than this. So I believe that our contribution and whatever we're going to discuss during this session has a lot to do with how we will strengthen the African pharmaceutical sector. I'll start with Miss Sophie Molly. One of the questions I need you to answer is, what is GS1 and what does it do?
Thank you, Joseph, for the question.
Yes,
yes, I will begin by that because I'm not sure how much this audience knows about GS1. Sometimes GS1 is seen as a solution provider. We're not a solution provider. We are a standard development organization, which is acting globally within 150 countries. We are a federation, and we do have 115 member countries who are acting locally, meaning that we do have roughly 2,500 members, and we are non-for-profit and neutral. We highly member users driven. This means that our SDO does not do anything on our side by ourselves. We are counting now more than 1,300,000 users worldwide. So this is all about our users coming with us, partnering with us in order to develop standards. The GS1 organization is operating in different sectors, not only healthcare. Of course, we are focusing on healthcare today, but just for you to know that those standards and those beeps or those barcodes that you can see in your daily life or when you go shopping are most of the time GS1 barcode, are applying in retail, in food, in technical industries, transport and logistics, and of course, ultimately healthcare. This is an organization which is really highly driven on the efficiency of and increasing the supply chain efficiency and security end-to-end, meaning we're going down to the patient within the healthcare providers. And this is where we can really, thanks to our global system of standards, following the movement of goods, of drugs, of vaccines, of PPE, of medical devices, throughout the supply chain in order really to make sure that within the hospital or within the pharmacy of the hospital, the right product can be seen and followed with a unique identifier on the product. That's really what we try to advocate.
Okay, thank you very much, Sophie. What is the mission and the vision of GS1 Healthcare?
So as I was saying, yes, GS1 is divided in different sectors, and healthcare as let's say, a special community, special group named GS1 Healthcare. And this group has been gathered 15 years ago. When I'm talking about a group and a community, this is really to get all the representatives, all the stakeholders relevant in healthcare sitting at the same table. Manufacturers, distributors, wholesalers, logistic providers, solution providers, donor organization, regulatory authorities, sectoral association, and of course, most importantly, healthcare providers. Their voice is key in order for everyone sitting at the table to understand the challenges and to try to speak the same language ultimately. Our vision is really around 4 pillars. So this group is expanding with lots of companies. We are there today in order to spread the word as well, to get more partners and to link bridges with all relevant stakeholders in healthcare, because ultimately this is all about facilitation, coordination, and cooperation, getting the relevant people who can have a vision in healthcare all together. Our 4 pillars are first, patient safety, of course. Ultimately, this is all about that. This can resonate in you, in all the panelists today. We might have been to the hospital. We might have had someone going to the hospital and facing all the challenges that you can face in a hospital. Increasing the supply chain efficiency and security, thanks to the global system of standards that we have. Really help traceability, and then it will be linked to really what Nuran will explain you, but trying really to drive and implement the traceability within the countries. We're talking about Africa. We started the journey, but there's still a lot to do. And of course, what is key is exchanging the data and be sure of the product data quality. This is something that we are really keen on, and because I've worked a lot of time in the fight against counterfeiting, and that we know that in Africa, the death around the substandard and falsified medical products are huge and will not stop tomorrow if we do not act together. This is really the vision that we have, and this is really why we're so happy to be sitting at such a table with you, Joseph, with you, with the other panelists, in order really to try to move forward and help ultimately our African colleagues, the African population.
Okay, thank you, Sophie. Nuran Idris, the African continent is listening and is interested in knowing the activities of GS1 around pharmaceutical traceability in Africa. Can you go for it?
Yeah, definitely. Happy to share that, Joseph. Thank you for the question. So really, there's a lot that I can say, so I'm just going to see how I can condense that into 2 minutes.
Yes.
Pharmaceutical traceability in Africa. So GS1's role in Africa, like I mentioned earlier, is to really bring together stakeholders to raise awareness, right? So because again, implementing GS1 standards for pharmaceutical traceability is not an activity that can be conducted specifically by one organization. So like my colleague Sophie mentioned, GS1 develops the standards. And so what we are trying to get many stakeholders in this space in Africa, including the development partners, the regulatory authorities, solution providers, basically anybody, any organization that is involved in the health commodity supply chain in Africa, we're trying to engage with them to raise their awareness about GS1 standards what it is and what they can do to incorporate these standards into their healthcare systems and ultimately to ensure patient safety. It's all about patient safety. If it's not about patient safety, then this is not the right solution. I think this is something that I heard really from a lot of times, that if we're talking about implementing GS1 standards, the main goal is to make sure the end patient receives the right commodity of the right quality, and similarly. So specifically in Africa, in 2019, there was a GS1 healthcare conference in Lagos, Nigeria. And during that conference, one of the main outcomes that we're still talking about 2 years later is a call to action. And this call to action was set forth by the Director General of Nigeria's regulatory authority, NAFDAC. And he invited many countries around Africa to come to the podium and sign a call to action to set up pharmaceutical traceability using GS1 standards, again, to ensure patient safety. That was the call. And there were 25 countries that joined the Director General, DG Moji, like we like to refer to her, joined her. 25 countries joined her on the podium, and they all signed this call to action. Now, at that time, I can very comfortably say that many countries really didn't fully understand how exactly were they going to go back home, and how exactly were they going back to implement pharmaceutical traceability. That was 2019. Yes, 25 countries signed the call to action. What's the status now? Again, I'm going to link you to another conference, another summit that happened, that was supposed to be physical, but it happened virtually last week. And for me personally, that was an opportunity to really see that we have come a long way. And the important messages that you talked about, Joseph, earlier about COVID-19 and falsification of medicines and whatnot being important challenges that have become even more prominent with the pandemic. So last week, during the third GS1 Healthcare Online Summit, we had representatives, actually I shouldn't say representatives, but we had director generals from the regulatory authorities in Nigeria, in Ethiopia, and from Zambia. They came together, and Rwanda, and they talked about how they were implementing pharmaceutical traceability in their systems. I must correct myself there a little bit. So in Rwanda, it wasn't the Director General, but it was a member from the regulatory authority. And that's the important piece that I wanted to share, that we had these senior managers who really took time out of their schedule, who came to this and they talked to us about what they were doing with regards to pharmaceutical traceability. And in that process demonstrated, I think, a lot of eloquence, a lot of understanding of the GS1 standards and how this meets into their local settings, into the challenges that they're facing, which again, you specifically talk about, Joseph, about substandard and falsified medicines. And obviously there's many more challenges about supply chain efficiencies and whatnot that have become prominent. Now, just to finish up, I know I'm a bit over time, but 3 important messages came up in these conversations last week, Joseph. And those were enablers for pharmaceutical traceability is something that requires collaboration amongst different stakeholders in the country. It is not something that a regulatory authority can do on their own, neither the Ministry of Health, neither the Ports Authority. It really requires all of these stakeholders that are involved in the supply chain, both within the country, within the region, and also internationally, to really get together and to speak the same language. And that's what GS1 standards enable. They enable these countries to really, okay, this is our mission. My colleague Sophie earlier talked about global harmonization. This means that we all want to have a GS1 data matrix on our products. We want this data matrix to be printed on this product while it's being manufactured, and this data matrix to be scanned as the product is moving along the supply chain up until it reaches the patient. It sounds very simple, but you and I both know that it's a very complex task, and that's what we're trying to do, and that's what the regulatory authorities that I mentioned to you earlier are trying to do. I just mentioned those 3 because they spoke last week, But behind the scenes, watching, listening, clapping, learning, were many more countries from across the board. So collaboration, that was the first message. The second one was alignment with global standards. Again, moving away from reinventing the wheel and really tagging into what has already been developed and making it better. So rather than starting afresh and saying, this is the standard for this country, that is the standard for that country, let's all get together and use one standard. Let's make it better. Let's make it stronger so that we can all have patient safety. And then, of course, we also learned about master data being an important foundation of traceability. You cannot trace what you don't know. So that's what master data is. So I know a lot of it might be Chinese or foreign language to some of you, but nonetheless, I just thought these were like important messages that I should highlight from last week. Back to you, Joseph.
Thank you very much, Noran Idris. I know Uganda, you may not have mentioned Uganda, but I'm happy to inform you that myself inclusive, we've tabled the requirement for GS1 before the president. And at least the last 1 month, somebody was bringing a different application for pharmaceutical traceability, and we put down our feet and we informed the president that there is GS1 already globally used by, I don't know what percentage, is it more than 80% or?
Well, the number from the top of my head, I would say maybe more than 70 countries currently are using GS1 standards to support pharmaceutical traceability. And that's a big country, a big number, 70 countries all over the world.
Yes, now,
and it's really great to hear that Uganda is also on the board, and I will be in touch with you, Joseph, to learn more and also to provide more support there. So happy to hear that. Thank you for sharing.
Yes, so the continent has known GS1 more for the other products, more than the pharmaceutical. Mm-hmm. Why the pharmaceutical now, Idris? Just in 2 minutes.
That's a great question, and I'll be really strict on time because that's an easy, straightforward one. So yes, there's many different products. Regulatory authorities focus on multiple products. They focus on pharmaceutical, medical devices, food. Again, it just depends on the country. But the main reason why we're focusing on pharmaceutical traceability now is really just like you mentioned earlier. We have over 70 countries that have already set up pharmaceutical traceability using GS1 standards. This means that the opportunity to reinvent the wheel is minimum, it's really next to zero, because we have the knowledge that exists. There's a country out there that has implemented an entire system, and they're happy to shorten that learning path for that and that country. So why not start with an easy, low-hanging fruit? Yes, you can't implement it in 3 months, but nonetheless, it's a low-hanging fruit. So why don't you start with a low-hanging fruit and then expand to additional products once a country, an organization, a hospital has had the opportunity to really learn, understand, and set up the requisite systems, infrastructure, regulatory framework, and etc. that help support traceability. That's just sweet and short, Joseph, I hope.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll be coming back to you with more questions regarding GS1 and the understanding in the African continent context. But moving on to Mr. Jolly Abu from the UN. I know standard is of key importance to you as the United Nations when it comes to pharmaceutical, but I need to pick from you how the prospective vendors do business with the United Nations and what you expected to pick from this session of strengthening pharmaceutical sector in on the African continent.
Thank you very much, Joseph. And thank you again once more to the panelists for this background information being provided. I think it's very helpful for me in understanding the challenges in Africa. I'm an African. I'm not blind to those challenges, but I'm now speaking from the point of view of the United Nations. I have been with the United Nations, like I said during my introduction, for about the past 17 years. From my own perspective, the the involvement of the African pharmaceutical industry in the day-to-day healthcare delivery system of the United Nations is not very encouraging. And from what I'm hearing other panelists say, then even the fear we used to have about quality of medicine in Africa is genuine. If quality is not, quality and patient safety are not assured. But definitely a substantial part of the industry is working. But why are they not engaged with the United Nations? Why are they not engaging with the United Nations? That is my concern here. I know that I have set up drug systems contracts, blood systems contracts, systems contract for vaccines and etc., worth millions of dollars. And that kind of money, even if just 10% or 20% of that is spent in the African pharmaceutical industry, it will go a long way in boosting the industry as far as I'm concerned. So the questions are, why are African pharmaceutical industries not engaged with the United Nations or engaging with the United Nations sufficiently to their benefit and the benefit of Africa as a whole? Is it due to awareness? Maybe. I don't think for the past 17 years, I think this is the first time I'm participating in a panel such as this to explain the opportunities of the pharmaceutical industry in Africa. But we have, there's no procurement that takes place in the UN that is not copied around the whole continents of the world. So is it that the pharmaceutical industry is not well engaged with the UN system and therefore does not have enough information? Is it because the way we write our statement of requirements or statement of works, is it that they are too stringent? Well, these are pharmaceutical products are not, they are not blocks and cements and stones. They are things that have direct impact on the UN, on the health of human beings. So we have to be very stringent. But how stringent are we? We are not going to be stringent more than what the WHO prescribes. And we believe that the pharmaceutical industry in Nigeria and in Africa is also running in tandem with the provisions of the WHO. And that's why we always say you have GMP or equivalent national standard that is equivalent to the GMP or WHO standard. So I don't think our SORs and SOWs, statement of requirements, are too stringent. Perhaps it is people, the industry to look at it properly and see how it can align itself to providing them. Is it the scope of supply? We are operating in Africa. This tropical environment, and our supplies, pharmaceutical supplies, are mainly for tropical diseases. So they are not different from what you will have in any other hospital in Africa or any other dispensary in any village in Africa. So the scope of supply cannot be a hindrance. Is it the logistics? Well, I just had my GS colleagues just talked about improving logistics in Africa. But I don't think, I believe that the logistics of shipping pharmaceuticals across borders in Africa will be more difficult than shipping it across international borders or intercontinental borders from Europe and South America to Africa. I don't think so. Is it management and quality? I've already mentioned that most of the time our requirements are WHO standard. We may mention EU, we may mention WHO, but we always say we will accept national equivalent for participation in the bidding exercises. So maybe I may use this opportunity to mention that while encouraging the African pharmaceutical industry, there is a need for them to be aware that for you to do business with the UN, you must be registered with what the UN calls the UN Global Market. And that's I have the website, www.ungm.org. It's very important. You don't have to be a multi-dollar industry for you to to participate in bidding exercises with the United Nations, and that's why we have about 3 vendor registration levels of award based on amount of contract. Basic level is less than 150,000. You can, if you register at that level, you can participate in all bidding exercises for worth 150,000 and below. Well, in this kind of case, we have seen some few companies in Kenya and East Africa, so to speak, who are tapping into this this opportunity and providing some support to the United Nations. But it is not covering the African continent enough. The UN presence is broadly spread across Africa, you know. And then we also have the after the basic level of less than 150,000, we have the level 1, which is 150,000 up to $500,000, and then we have the level 2, which is $500,000 upwards. So depending on the financial capacity of the firm that wants to deal with the United Nations in supply of pharmaceuticals, vaccines, and even blood. If you have a very good blood banking system, the UN is interested. We supply blood today across Africa from the Netherlands. It's a huge, huge cold chain issue. So there's opportunity. I want to say there's opportunity for the African pharmaceutical industry with the United Nations. However, of concern is what I've had today, and it is something that we are always very careful with when we're dealing with the industry in Africa, and that's traceability and patient safety. I hope at the end of the day, this will get improved, and the UN system can rely more on products and services, pharmaceutical products and services coming out of Africa. It was very, very glaring. The COVID-19 situation really exposed the continents. Unfortunately, really exposed the continent's unpreparedness to emerging diseases. It's a very, very terrible experience. So I think that's the challenge. I will be part of the challenge, part of my contribution to the challenges. However, the UN provides a huge opportunity for pharmaceutical industry in Africa in its day-to-day business. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Jolie. Of course, the feeling of the African companies, the pharmaceutical companies, is that they cannot afford to push off the big boys in the pharmaceutical industry, the likes of Pfizer, the likes of Cipla, and so on. You can mention them. So the feeling is, what is it that UN has put in place to make sure that the big boys do not push off the guys in Africa? Because if you're, as you said, if you're supplying pharmaceuticals to the African population, and there are pharmaceutical companies already existing in the respective countries, what is it that should be made more clear that the African pharmaceutical companies can as well compete with the big boys in the industry?
Yeah, thank you, Joseph. Again, like I mentioned in my initial response, the various levels of award, less than 150,000 is basic level. Level 1 is 150,000 to $500,000, and level 2 is $500,000 upwards. This is not restrictive, and I believe that these various levels of registration affords the African pharmaceutical industry opportunities to participate at various levels. Okay, but however, it is very important to clarify that the UN procurement system is not in any way restrictive to African participation. It's a global requirement. Pharmaceutical requirement is global, and the UN provides equal opportunity for participation, so long as its basic principles are observed. For example, the UN procurement system, whether it's pharmaceutical or not, are based on certain principles, first of which is best value for money. We don't go for the cheapest, we go for but driven by quality at a competitive price. We will not buy because it is cheap. We will buy because it is the right quality to meet the task or the challenge we want to conquer. So the pharmaceutical industry must be of the right quality. And that's why I think this conference is very, very important. Traceability, safety of patient, all African countries coming together to ensure that the quality of products in the African market meets the required standard. I'm so happy to hear that. And maybe a question that my colleagues will have to answer later is this the standards that GS1 is creating? Can it be referred to, just as we mentioned, the 900-215 ISO? Can the GS1 standards also be inclusive? What will these standards assure the UN about if we include it in our specifications? We also want, the UN also makes sure that there's fairness in its procurement system. From buyers' specifications, we will not request, that's why most of our requirements are generic. We will not request only items that are bought only or produced by a certain firm. We make it as broad, as generic as possible, so that anybody who has an equivalent of what we are looking for can participate. Our principle is driven a lot by integrity, probity, having moral and principles and honesty and decency in dealing with others. We make sure that our procurement systems are accountable to the entire world because of all member states. Every procurement participant in the procurement system must be a person of high integrity, and there's no biases and there's no support. We have to be as transparent as possible. All information on procurement policies, procedures, and opportunities and processes must be stated very clear, very to the understanding of everybody without biases. And client centricity, we make sure that the client is the focus in all our procurement efforts. It's not the UN staff involved, but the client. And that's why we will make sure that if you ask us 20 questions, we will make sure we provide proper answer for you to guide you in the process. But however, most importantly, we must realize that UN has its own requirements, and we cannot bend the rules just because we want to accommodate the African industry. I think there is a point of where we can converge, where the African industries can really look at what the UN requirement is and see how it can tailor its capabilities, its framework infrastructure towards meeting those requirements. And hopefully, I want to see African pharmaceutical market dealing broadly, efficiently, and with good quality service to the United Nations in the coming days as these discussions proceed.
Yes. Thank you very much, Jolie. That has been a mouthful. And I think the African continent has had. I see a hand up for Ms. Sophie Molly, but as you come on board, there is a key concern definitely with data management and tailoring the information that is specific to countries that are interested in doing the monitoring of the pharmaceuticals on the market. When you use the, any of the scanners on any of your barcodes and so on, you're able to see the manufacturer, the expiry dates, but there are specific tailored information that some of the regulators or specific countries want to see. And maintaining the database is of concern. Can you comment on what you wanted to comment, and also talk about standardization of data and database management for information using the GS1?
Thank you, Joseph. I will try to maybe begin, and Nuran, you complement if I miss something.
Yes.
So to Jolie's point, and thank you for this insightful explanation, Jolie. I'd like to build on what some comments you made. So COVID-19 has certainly accelerated the commitment of some African countries implementing or committing to implement traceability. That's for sure. We see that worldwide. We see, I mean, for us at GS1 Healthcare, COVID-19 has shifted all our work and all our priority. We saw so many challenges with the vaccines not tracked and traced at the beginning, that and at the same time, we see a lot of opportunities, because if we had knew, if we would have been prepared enough for this pandemic, maybe we would have had, put all those barcodes on vaccines beforehand, and the supply chain would have been more reliable. This is the case now, but just to explain that at the beginning, this was fizzy, and this was something that we were all looking at. Okay, if you get the vaccines, did you see a barcode? How is it track and trace? Did you see HGT? Did you see something? Okay, and we were taking pictures on the vaccines and exchange it with one another to see that. So I agree with you. I think COVID-19, with all the very, very bad consequences that this pandemic had, has accelerated that. You talk about traceability. And now, I mean, in 2021, we see lots of traceability initiatives popping up in Africa. One is the Global Trust Repository, one of them, where GS1 really enables that. This trust repository will be capable to host traceability manufacturer data and let me access them for each and every country. So this is one of the traceability initiative that is happening now, and it would maybe lead the way, and it will be certainly accelerate the implementation of traceability, or the adoption of that, or saying, yeah, there's a way, there's a process. We understood first what it is all about, we understood the importance of it, and now we will put that into practice. Back to your question, Jolie, on the barcode that we're using. I mean, our global trend are the GS1 data matrix that we put on the secondary packaging of the product, with the GTIN, serial number, lot number, and expiration date, because these are the 4 data attributes that we really need and that we try to really advocate worldwide, and not only in Africa. Of course, Africa, yes, but this is really something that we try to do worldwide. This is not Europe as that adopted, and some other countries, but this is absolutely not the case everywhere in the world. This is an ISO standard, so the interoperability is done because we are, as a community, having partnership and having conversation with ISO, HL7, SNOMED, all those standard development organizations. We are very close to them. And with this global system of standards, and I won't go into very much details about that, because this is a lot of acronyms and this is very complex. But once you identify this product and you capture that with this data matrix, because this is readable by a scanner, by an external machine, we come to the exchange, the data exchange. And this is really where what GS1 is all about. This is this global system of standards where you would have the possibility to use the GDSN, the Global Data Synchronization Network, for master data. You will be able to use EDI, the electronic data interchange, for transactional or commercial data. And all of this is about interoperability. Our standards are global, meaning that in all the hospitals of the world, any hospital of the world, where you see, and you know that more than me, as much as me, that you can come in to an hospital and there are hundreds of different clinical systems which are operating and do not talk with one another, because they are not interoperable. If GS1 standards are implemented, then this is possible, because this is all about having this unique identifier which following the product on the supply chain, because the supply chain are global. most of them are global now. So just maybe to build on what you were saying, to explain and to tell you, really, this is all about interoperability. And ultimately, if everyone, and that's why we're here, and that's what we are trying to do, advocating and implement at the manufacturer level, because there's still a lot to do at the even at the global level. You know, there's still a lot to advocate, and the journey is not over. Down to the healthcare providers, if the same standard is used, then of course the supply chain is more transparent, more efficient, more secure, and down to the patient, especially in developing countries like Africa, you increase and you improve the quality of care. And I see that Nouran has a hand up, so I will stop talking and,
yes,
and give you the floor.
Yes, Nouran, as you come on board, you have your hand up there. The key thing I think that you need to clarify is tailoring information to country specific. There are certain countries that want to see registration numbers in the data and also database management. Do you provide this support for tailored information for countries that want to adopt the GS1?
That's actually the one of the points that I wanted to also clarify earlier, Joseph. So thank you for re-raising that. So you're raising a very important point, right? You're talking about the data matrix currently containing something called a GTIN, global trade item number, a batch lot information, expiry date, and a serial number, right? So these are the most pieces of information that you would find on a data matrix when you scan a product. I think the question you're asking, why can't we include maybe registration number for Uganda or registration number for Nigeria, whatever it is in this? So that's where the complexity comes. And I think both me, Sophie, and myself have talked a lot about global harmonization, right? And earlier, again, referring to a point I raised earlier, I mentioned that we have over 70 countries that have set up pharmaceutical traceability systems using GS1 standards. That is only possible because they have unanimously gone to the manufacturers and consistently, I mean, not 100%, but to the most part, they have requested the manufacturers to include the GS1 data matrix with those pieces of information. And then what they're doing locally in their systems is using this information, the GTIN information, the global trade item number information, as a key to access additional information, which can be shared as well in your agreement with the manufacturers and whatnot. So the reason why we're talking about the same information to be included on a data matrix across the board, whether you are in country A or in country B or in country Z, that we want to make sure at least what a unanimous agreement is that let's all ask for the same information, so that it becomes easier for the manufacturer. I don't know how much the audience or the panel understands or knows about the pharmaceutical production system. Frankly, I don't know a whole lot as well, but I do know that anytime the manufacturer has to customize printing for a specific country, they have to stop, edit, start, continue, stop, edit, start, continue. That process means time, means money. Time and money, I think they're interchangeable right now, right? And that's why they are advocating for it, and I think regulators around the world have also seen the value. And even the country that I've mentioned, I mentioned last week, we heard from Nigeria, we heard from Ethiopia, we heard from Zambia. They have also understood the importance, and they are also requesting for the GS1 data metrics with those pieces of information, and then additional information that you are talking about, Joseph, including registration and number and whatnot, would be available alongside, would be printed on the side of the product as per the local regulations. So that's in a nutshell. That's why that is happening. That's happening specifically that way. So that's the first thing. The second thing, which you mentioned, Joseph, is also regarding, that the products are existing and they contain information that is only requested for by other countries around the world. And that's the power of regulations, of authorities like yourself, Joseph, the National Drug Authority in Uganda. Again, it's got different names wherever you go in the different parts of the world. And the regulator has the power to say, anytime you bring products to my country, make sure they have this and this and this and this information. The more that information, the more that request is consistent with what countries are asking for, the lesser the hurdle and the lesser the challenges. Because the last thing, when you implement a regulation that doesn't meet the global requirements, two things can happen. A, they would not comply, manufacturers would not comply. B, they would say, okay, so products will come in a scenario, products will come, but they will not be compliant with the requirements that you set up. I think the second, which is the most challenging and most dire consequence, would be them not being able to supply that particular market because of the requirements not being in line with what is being requested for. So global harmonization is a lot of what we have been asking about. Now, I know I have just one more minute, like maybe 30 more seconds. An important point that I also wanted to clarify, building on what Jolie has been mentioning. I think, Jolie, in your conversations, you've mentioned a lot WHO and these organizations and the role they have to play in this space in providing guidance. My colleague Sophie perhaps mentioned, perhaps didn't, apologies if she has, but the WHO has issued a guideline which provides guidance on how countries can set up pharmaceutical traceability systems. GS1 is a very good example. It's mentioned there as a recommendation as well that countries can think about. USAID, UNDP, Gavi, UNICEF, these organizations are also in line. They've also requesting their manufacturers, so products that they are procuring, whether they're coming to Africa, whether they're going to wherever they're going in the world, if they're procured by these agencies, that they would contain a data matrix either between now or it's I think most of them have a phased approach. So it's either going to happen now or I mean, it's already perhaps already happened or will happen in the next 2, 3, 4 years or so. And so the reason that is valuable is because then products are already existing in African markets that are in line with the global requirements. So one task or one ask I can ask for you is whenever you go to the pharmacy next time, just take a look and look for a product and see if you can find a GS1 data matrix on it with that information. So I'll end now and hand back over to you.
Okay, now as we are wrapping up this session, I will start with Mr. Jolie Abu. I would like you, yes, you've talked about your willingness as UN to at least see the African pharmaceutical companies also bid and supply the UN. But you have also mentioned that you cannot bend the rules of the UN, especially when it comes to quality. I know the African pharmaceutical plan has highlighted a number of weaknesses and solutions that need to be worked on. One of them being financing. The African companies are struggling with financing themselves to set up pharmaceutical plants that meet the WHO pre-qualification requirements. In Uganda, we have 1 out of 30 that is meeting the WHO pre-qualification standards, that is CIPLA. There are quality issues, the support, the policy by government, and the harmonization by the different regulators within the African regional economic communities. Where does the UN, as you wrap, come in to provide any possible support beyond the window for the African companies to supply, but also that willingness to build their capacity?
Thank you, Joseph. For now, I think I have to be careful as I answer this question, because the UN must be perceived as a neutral organization, and where I'm involved in procurement of pharmaceuticals is purely for the end products that assures of quality. I cannot right now talk on how the UN can support the growth of the pharmaceutical industry in Africa. I'm not at that level to provide that guidance. Maybe there could be something I can find out later and provide to the panel. The panel I will do, but for now I can't. You remember that there are other UN agencies. You have UNICEF. You have other organizations, even the WHO itself. Yeah. Maybe those that procure at that global level, who are always in interaction with the state governments, you know, maybe those are the people that can provide this kind of insight into how they can collaborate and assist the growth of the pharmaceutical industry, partnering with national governments and providing them guidance. And whether there is going to be financial support, there could be. But at my own level right now, and for what we do, it is more about procuring and ensuring the healthcare of the UN staff in the field. I'm sorry, I cannot give you enough.
Thank you. Thank you. That is understood. Now to you, Sophie, as you do the wrap up, give an assurance to the African pharmaceutical industry and fragmented markets that are suffering with the counterfeits across the continent. Where are you coming in to provide the governments also with the kind of support they need and bringing government together in one basket in terms of harmonization as you do the wrap up? Sophie?
Thank you, Joseph. And this is not an easy one. Look, GS1 is neutral, non-for-profit, non-coercive, as a non-coercive mandate. So we cannot just knock at your door and say, hey, Joseph, I think it would be good if you can advocate and adopt the global trend and the GS1 data matrix. So that's where, and I might repeat myself a bit, but that's where the GS1 healthcare community is taking into play. We do have our local member organization within the country. So we, as the global office at the headquarters in Brussels, in Belgium, and in Princeton, in the US, do develop the standards, but all the implementation is done locally. And our colleagues at the member organization level, and we have another acronym for that, /MOs, are doing the work and are talking to the governments in order to advocate again and again and again that this global trend is the path to take. So we are coming into play. We are supporting, of course. We are supporting with expanding the community of the GS1 healthcare. So we do have many members, many big players who are supporting that initiative too, and that are spreading the word. And this is the strength of this community. This is really to be able to get everyone at the table again, but to be able, through our member organization, to get access to the relevant stakeholder and to get access to their ears in order for them to understand the challenges. We have a public policy team, some of our colleagues at GS1 Healthcare, who monitor all the requirements, who are really aware of the latest requirements, latest deadline, what is happening in Uganda, what is happening in Zambia, in Zimbabwe, in all over the world, not only Africa. And this is the strength, because these are the manufacturers, these are the member organizations, these are everybody together who can really not change the world, but at least talk and try to understand why this is so important. So we don't knock at the door of the government. We try to advocate. This kind of forum is ideal for us as well, because this can be resonated and the good word can be spread. But even if we do not enforce, we highly recommend, and we are there to push it. I hope it answers kind of your question.
Yes. Thank you very much. I'm happy to inform the panelists that Uganda is working on our own vaccine for COVID-19. We're at level 7.
Great to hear.
The biggest challenge definitely we are facing is the inputs from especially the Western world. They are really holding these inputs. And we're at the stage of cleaning, and then we start injecting into the mice. So we are moving. We are not sleeping as the African continent. I will really tell you with the confidence that we are working against the counterfeits. Yes, we are tired of running after the counterfeiters, and that is where Nuran Idris is going to give us the closing remark. When will the African pharmaceutical regulators stop running after the counterfeiters? What is it that you're giving as the last stroke into the biggest bombshell for the African continent on counterfeiting pharmaceuticals?
Great to hear what you shared, Joseph, and I'm really looking forward to learning more about that initiative and hoping that it is a success. When? Now. Simple. It's really happening now. The countries that we're talking about pharmaceutical traceability, about GS1, about counterfeit, just talking about it in 2018, when all these conversations started in Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, versus the country that are on the table now, that are talking, that are reaching out, that are expressing interest, the number is increasing. So the time is now for regulators to set up to join the movement. You know as much as I do that Africa is an entire continent. We don't have islands. So if Tanzania does something and Kenya doesn't, then it's not good, right? Because if Uganda does something, then Tanzania doesn't or Kenya doesn't, then again, it's not good. So we really need to work together. But I can definitely say that it's happening now. Regulators are on the table, manufacturers, pharmaceutical industry overall in Africa now also needs to get on the table. I know there's the issue of cost, there's the issue of awareness and whatnot, but it all begins by taking the first step. And one last thing I'd like to say there is that, again, regarding cost, I know that for a fact that when there's more implementations, when there's more countries setting up pharmaceutical traceability, when there's more companies with these equipment and all the process and the ERPs and whatnot, the more companies there are, the lesser the cost, because then the demand increases. So that means if a manufacturer looked into pharmaceutical trade, into setting up serialization or some sort of system in 2018 and said, that's too expensive, I encourage them to ask again, because I feel very confident that the numbers are decreasing because they're becoming more widespread. So I'll end it with that. Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you very much, panelists. And we leave a challenge to Africa, not only to work on the finished products, but also the supporting industry for excipients, for active pharmaceutical ingredients. We have a lot of plants in Africa, and all APIs we know, they come from these plants. And it is time for us to take advantage of this. We should not rest. We should standardize the pharmaceuticals in Africa. We should find ourselves on a table where we reduce from importing 99% of the vaccines in Africa that we consume to also export to other countries, other than being a dumping place or only the consuming country and paying all our hard-earned money within the African countries to other foreign governments. Though we are part of the global world, we need to be aware that the African continent cannot be a small boy in the game. So this ends today's session, and I wish all the panelists well and the audience. Thank you.